Hello and welcome to our Facebook Live here Thursday afternoon, and the weather is not too bad in Warwickshire, I have to say. The sun is out there, a few little bits of chills, but you know, aren't the gardens still looking well? It is usually the most untidy time of year because we've had all the beautiful autumnal colours on the foliage, but of course now they're all over the floor. Things are getting a little bit muddy in the garden, but I still like it. There's an element of stillness. It always seems a little bit more quiet. The bird and the sound of the birds always seem much more in focus, and the beautiful majesty of it. Now, we are live at the minute, so I've just had one message straight on there. Lorraine Pritchard, hello from Hertfordshire. Hello to you. Thank you for sending me your first message. Please keep your messages coming. Tell me where you're from. Rosemary Purdy here. Hello from Northern Ireland. Very good wishes to you. Tell us what the weather's like there. Send us in messages. Any questions you've got on your own garden, I'd be very happy to answer them. I've got a lot of questions here, some from last week that I didn't have time to finish, and a few more. Send your questions in as you go. Tina Vaughan here as well. Hi to me from you, and hi from me to you as well. Please keep sending them. Let us know that you're doing. Julia Young from Enfield. Big hello to you, Julia. And I hope you're enjoying your garden this afternoon as well. So keep your questions coming in. I'll pick those up. There's more information that I've got here, and I'll just run through. It's a very relaxed afternoon. I'll keep taking your questions and giving you the answers as best I can on things of your garden. If you feel that Gemma Wilson from Stoke, hello to you, and Jackie Pugh from the West Midlands. It is a lovely day. We're in the West Midlands, Warwickshire. I don't know whereabouts you are, Jackie, but please let us know. And the gardening is really important at this time of year because there's an element of darker nights. There's obviously the conditions sad where we feel a little bit more down because of the lack of the light outside. Engaging with plants and nature really does uplift our spirits. It nourishes the soul, and it's things like that that engage to make our gardens feel great, and our gardens of course make us feel great too. Another hello from Amanda McConnell from Derbyshire. Hello to you, Amanda. Let's take a few of your questions as we go. Here we have the one that comes over from Angelique McConnell. She says, thank you very much. She wants to transplant a holly bush, which is the best time for transplanting this holly bush. I've got one in the garden for a while. Well, I think with the secret, with anything to do with transplanting, we're just about getting into the right time. When we say transplant, these are obviously plants that you've got in the garden that maybe not in the right place you'd like to move. Or, a lot of people are doing at the minute, moving house. You've got some plants in your garden, real nice specimens, and you want to take them with you. So what's the best way of doing it, and when is the best time? Well, the secret is usually when we get hit by the first big hard frost, and we haven't had one of those yet, so it's usually a little bit later into November, the plants go dormant. A lot of course, deciduous plants lose their leaves, and a lot of the evergreen plants go into a dormancy. So therefore, you can lift them quite easily because a lot of the roots that they've got already established, particularly for taking in water to keeping them growing, you can move them and transplant them because they won't be using too many of those roots at the moment. So usually after the first frost, the plant goes into dormancy and it's right to move. Now, the secret is with moving them is you cannot move a plant that's too old. A plant that's been in the garden well over 5-6 years or something similar to that, that's really established with quite thick stems at the base, it isn't as easy to remove because, of course, you've got to lift up quite a mass of root system and you'll damage some of that roots as it goes. But here's the best tip. Get hold of some polythene, okay? Polythene or an old bed sheet or blanket or something similar to that. Dig around the outside. So if your plant was in the center of this table here, dig at least a length bigger all the way around the outside. Really, as much root as you can dig up and lift, either yourself if you're on your own or two of you lift. So dig down and around as much as possible and try and get in as much as you can with the spade. And then with leverage, you'll sort of like loosen the plant. Lift it straight up onto the polythene or the blanket or the sheet and then wrap that round it very quickly to stop any soil falling off that may have roots that break away from the main plant itself. And if you're dealing with a big shrub or even small plants as well, the principle remains the same. One lift and then re-secure the root ball. Then take it either to a container or your next destination, dig a hole roughly the same size as the plant you've taken out. A bit bigger I normally do. I get some fresh compost, something like a Miracle Grow, peat-free, slice the top off, and then I put that in the base of the hole. So when the plant starts to grow out, it's not growing out into stones or clay, it's a bit of a comfy cushion as the roots establish itself. Firm well in, and when it comes into the spring, make sure you well water. I normally do a bit of a prune back at the top as well, because if you've lost some roots, you can compensate that by pruning the top down, and that's probably the best way you can lift and transplant plants. As simple as that. What else have we got here? Where have we got there? From Derbyshire. How often do I water potato plants in the greenhouse at this time of year? So you've still got potato plants. Well, the bottom line with most of them, if you're producing, it depends whether you're producing potatoes, or whether the potato plant, which is a common name for another plant variety. But the secret of anything inside the greenhouses is that the warmth that the sun gives, irrespective, and of course it protects against cold, a lot of the plants are still growing. In my greenhouse, it's full not just of some winter crops of vegetables, but a lot of my geraniums and fuchsias that are overwintering. So you have to keep an eye on watering and make sure you don't let plants sit in water, that they drain freely, but keep an eye on them and probably water them with sunny days like this at least once a week, just keeping them into trim. What have we got there? Sally Collingwood, thank you for your question, Sally. David, is it too late to prune roses that are a bit too tall? Yeah, I'll give them a prune. Now, normally I'll give a real hard prune back to out-facing buds, quite low down on a lot of my roses, and I do that in springtime. But in autumn, I give them a tidy up, really. So you can reduce them by half comfortably. It stops a thing called rocking. All right, which is really where if you've got a rose in there and the wind's blowing it because it's quite, top heavy, it has a tendency to rock. And where it rocks at the base, it presses the soil around. So you get this gap which water gets in, and then if that freezes, it causes difficulty. So prune them down, tidy them up, and give them an even harder prune when it comes down to the spring. And for more information, of course, just go to my website, daviddomoney.com, and it is packed with guides and PDFs and blogs and things. All free, so just go on the website, knock yourself out for more details. I hope that's really helpful for you there. What are the best succulents for planting outside all year round? Very good question there from Lorraine Pritchard. Hello, Lorraine. I love succulents. I suppose just to give you the classification of succulents. Succulents are very fleshy leaved plants. There's two real types. Of course, there's more Mediterranean varieties that you grow inside your own homes. Things like kalanchoes and crassulas, which is the money plant, and there's a whole host of other varieties that you grow inside as houseplants. And they're great for kids, and they're great for you to grow too, because they contain their own moisture within the leaves, so they're really easy to look after, and they can tolerate a lot of neglect. And then outside, there are plant varieties like semperviviums, the little rosette plants, or house leeks as they're otherwise known, sedums as well, which are quite fleshy leaved. Usually under the alpine section, most of them are classified under, and you can buy them from garden centres now because they're still open during this lockdown period, so it's a chance for you to garden, which is really great. So you can plant them really now because they're quite tough. If you're planting and creating borders, autumn's a great nature's time for planting. So go into your garden centre and I'd put them in now, let them get established before the winter so they perform really well for you in the springtime. What else have we got there? Gemma Wilson, I'd like to dig up my dahlias. They're still flowering, but I'm moving house soon. I thought we answered something similar to this. Somebody gave us a similar question last week. I think I'd leave as much as you can to get the colour of the flower, but we've had a couple of close frosts here. I don't know where they are, where you're doing it. So I'd look, this is that balance. Do I leave them in, enjoy the flower? Oh, there's a hard frost, there's some damage. Usually we get a few taster frosts before we get one really big one, but who's to argue with nature, and it could happen at any time. I think there is some point where they start to look scrappy, then I'd bank them, take what flowers you've got in, use them as cut flowers in vases inside, and get your tubers into protection for the winter months. It's life. It's not this morning. I'm not on with James Martin or Alan at the weekend shows. This is my show, just with me and you. So if you excuse me, I'll have a quick slurp of tea. It's delicious. The camera crew just at the back there giving me that funny look. But you've got to have a cup of tea. I'm just chatting with my mates. What else have we got here? So Sonia Hawksford, which is the best way to prune roses and how can I prevent black spot next year? And that's a very interesting question. So the secret with most pruning, I always believe, keep as open heart as you can. They say when pruning apple trees and the like, create a wine glass effect. And we all know what that looks like. So first of all, no crossing branches in the middle. Remove the 3 Ds, dead, diseased and damaged. Just take those out. Always prune to an out-facing bud. So you got buds on different points on the stem. If you prune down to a bud, wherever the direction of the bud is facing, that's when the new branch will grow. So prune it down to a bud that's out facing, so you get that lovely open wine glass effect. I usually cut at an angle. Sharp secateurs, mine. Don't crush the top. Cut at an angle away from the bud. So there's almost like a squeeze. So the water's not going into the bud, it's going away. And you can prune quite hard back. It really depends. There's a lot of people got different feeling for roses. I like having a little bit of height, so I keep a slightly taller structure because I want a bit more height on them. Other than that, you can prune them quite hard, just short off the ground. But I give it a light trim now, then a harder prune in spring. I hope that's answered your questions there, Sonia. June Benson here. David, I have a lovely Acer in a large pot on the patio. It's beautiful, but a couple of bare branches that have appeared this year. I'm okay to chop these off. Here's a really good tip for you, June. You need a 2p piece. You can do it with a 10p piece. Depends what you got lying about. What I normally do is take hold of the coin and just peel back, use the coin to peel back a little bit of the bark. If it is brown and dry, it's dead. If you peel it back and it's white or green and moist, it's still alive. And that's the best way to identify whether something's alive or dead, because it doesn't always look so obvious when you see it. And if it is dead, of course, cut it out, cut it down to the next green bit. But you do get partial dieback with acers. Been particularly bad in my garden this year. We've got 2 really beautiful weeping acers, beautiful purple, the finely cut leaf one, Dissectum, and that's had a lot of dieback. But I think we've had a great deal of stress with those very hot summer and spring that we had, then very wet, then very dry again. It affects them in different ways. Okay, what have we got? Amanda McConnell here has given me a question. Do you recommendations for any houseplants suitable for a south-facing conservatory? Well, it really depends with conservatories whether you've got diffuse light coming in, whether your panes are polarised. A lot of them are nowadays, certainly on the top, because it's the burn that takes place. Lots of plants prefer indirect sunlight, brightly lit but not in full sun. I think that's a pretty standard thing for a great deal of houseplants, apart from things like cacti and succulents that are a little bit more tolerant. Things like the Sansevierias here, the mother-in-law's tongue, they make really good houseplants because they're as hard as nails, and they're also pretty good for removing some toxins from within the air. I mean, when I say toxins, things like trichloroethylene, formaldehyde, benzene from people that are either smoking, wood burners, detergents, antiperspirants, a whole host of other things that we use inside our house. And of course, we're not ventilating as much now because it's the winter months with our windows open. So these work pretty well. The yucca is a big favourite, my old mucka, the yucca. They're pretty good. They can be a little bit spiny for kids. I'm just saying what I've got around me at the minute. Cheese plants are brilliant. Monsteras make really good house plants. Things like little kalanchoes. In fact, garden centres have got plenty. You can find a spot in a brightly lit conservatory that's not taking a hard hit with the full sun. You'll have a lot of beautiful plants that can grow in there, and just go out and enjoy yourself and collect them. And they do so good. They lift your heart. Having plants inside the home as a foil, as you look through the windows of the conservatory, see your garden outside. We love it. I hope that's helpful to you, Amanda. And let's take a few more questions from the list that I've got here. Terry Priest is saying, I've got very heavy clay soil. It's a nightmare to dig. Should I be doing anything now? Yes, Terry, you should. The one thing is if you have clay soil, and if you have sandy soil enough, is digging in as much organic matter. They help the soils in very different ways because they're very different structures. So Clay soils, it's always best if you've got very heavy clay, is never to dig when the ground is sodden and wet, because it destroys one, it's blooming hard work on your back, sticks to your spade, and it ruins the soil structure. So let the soil dry out a little bit with clay soils when you're digging in. If you have to dig and it is sticking to your spade, get a can of WD-40. Spray over the blade of your spade before it's got dirt in, and you find the oil will stop a lot of the soil sticking to it. That's a really good tip. And likewise, if you have to cut your grass after it's rained, and for some reason you have to do it, you can't wait, spray a bit of oil over the blades of the lawnmower, and it helps you get through that. But adding organic matter into your soil is really important. It's difficult to think that the soil is a living, breathing thing. It's as live in your garden as the birds that visit, your family, and the plants that are in there. Soil is alive with many microorganisms. Archaea and algae and bacteria and fungus and protozoa, virus, and the other components that live and breathe in the soil. In fact, if you were to grab just a handful of soil, you will have more microorganisms living in your hands at that moment than there are humans on this planet. So feeding the soil is essential. So you can either buy, the Levingtons do a really good mix, organic matter. It's in a bag, you can get it from the garden centre. It's not too smelly. You cut the bag out, tip it out and dig it in, and you are feeding that soil. And if you feed that soil and those microorganisms are healthy, they will help your plants grow too. Because normally it's not just about feeding plants, it's about feeding soil. And that can't be done with the just general liquid feed. You've got to put organic matter in. So you can buy it from bags, you can buy it from the corner and lay-bys from farmers who put them up there, farmyard manure, and dig that into the soil, because it helps the structure, it gives shelter, it gives moisture, it gives food, and of course, because it opens up the soil, it gives air to those microorganisms to help them to grow. And healthy soil is healthy plants as well. Or you can collect up the leaves in your garden and compost, or any aspects of home-produced compost, and dig that into the soil as well. What else have we got here? Catherine Newman, do you cut back salvias? It really depends. Salvias is a big family. I usually, a lot of my herbaceous salvias, I give a trim back to keep the structure, to encourage more growth. Salvias, because sage is a salvia, evergreen salvias like sage, I don't cut back. I like to see them grow and spread. But any herbaceous perennials that you've got in your garden, you can trim. I would say that if you've got some herbaceous perennials like seed heads left over, teasel or something like the alliums you have in the garden that have still got seed within the framework of the dry husk, leave them going, leave them there. It's good natural food for the birds that visit your garden. So there's really a combination of leaving something that adds protection to the wildlife and something that makes the garden look generally tidy. And I usually classify those in between, are they food or are they shelter? But I cut a lot of herbaceous back. I group it all together. It's just the dry foliage. I've got a couple of gutter pipes that I've cut into small sections like that, and I just shove them into the gutter pipes. And I've got a sections behind the garage, and it's great little hibernation areas for our beneficial bugs and insects that visit the garden. Of course, it's also good bedding for the hedgehogs as well. So many others. Who have we got here? Thian Fu Singh, you say wildflowers sowed in September, and they have been growing vigorously for the past month. Will they survive the winter? I think with a lot of wildflowers, when you plant, they are in a big planter. Yeah, you'll get a couple of things. Any of the perennials that are part of the wildflowers, they die back and the roots are still there to reproduce for the following year. With a lot of other wildflowers that are annuals, they produce seed that fall back into the container and go again. So tidy up your container, let nature play its course, and see what you've got coming in for the next year when they start to sprout in spring. And you can also intersprinkle, if you wish, fresh seeds. But remember, the compost in any containers only has about 3 months of food in there, and then gradually drains with its food availability. So either by sprinkling compound fertilizer that breaks down slowly, which you can get. There's a lot of Miracle Grow do a shaker pack that you can put these like little pellets in, like little sprinkles. Or you feed with liquid feed during the season as well. Some wildflowers don't need it as much, but I think if you're growing in a container where elements of natural food occurring is more limited, feeding helps as well. Where are we? David from Andy Stacey. Hello, Andy. Poinsettias. How do I stop the leaves coming off, please? It's the temperature. It's the temperature that defoliates poinsettias. If you've been into the store and you have bought your Christmas poinsettia with those lovely red leaves, or bracts as we call them, the flowers are the little nuggets right in the centre. They're usually a bit greeny and a bit yellow. They're very sensitive to temperature change, is one of the big things. So the biggest issue is you've got to get them sleeved. If you go into the supermarket or garden centre, it's always better to buy bigger, better plants from garden centres and spend a bit more than the cheaper ones, because you get better display, and it's supporting British growers as well, or any form of grow, because a lot of poinsettias grown in the UK. And make sure they're sleeved, and you protect the top. So when you go out of the garden centre to your car and it's a frosty evening, that's what damages the plants. So make sure they're protected. And if you've got them at home and they're either A, by the back door with a draft, that causes defoliation, or if they're on a shelf right above a radiator, which is really hot, goes off at night, gets cold, goes back on again, that fluctuation of temperature. So regular temperature normally is a better play for poinsettias, and defoliation usually occurs when it's very erratic. So I hope that's helpful for you, Andy. Lovely plants. If you haven't got a plant in a poinsettia for Christmas like Andy's got, I'd get one. Something that just brings Christmas home to me. Okay, other questions that we've got here. Anna Healy said we had very few tomatoes this year. Really? Growing them in a greenhouse from seed, very good, very good. Growing anything from seed, you have a much more connection with the plant that you've germinated from the start, rather than just by the small plantlets. It's feeding that's one of the issues, Anna, and it's a difficult balance. I don't usually grow any of the tomatoes I grow inside the greenhouse. I don't grow in the ground. I grow in double thick grow bags. You can get the little thin ones, and then you get the thicker, or deep fill, I think they call it. I grow them in the deep fill ones in the greenhouse, because rather than just growing in soil, because it helps me in three ways. It's fresh soil and compost, so it's got a bit of food in it before it starts. And it does not have any disease from the previous year, because if you're growing them in the ground, of course, you're growing them again in the following year. You're exposing them to that type of thing. And I find it easier to control, because the bag actually, you cut a hole in the bag, so you don't lose so much. Unlike the ground, you don't lose a lot of water through evaporation. It only evaporates around where you've got the hole. So I'd feed on a regular basis. Tomorite is the classic. You can just follow the instructions. As soon as the first truss sets, keep that feeding in. Feed, feed, feed. You'll get very good quality tomatoes in growth. You get a healthy plant, but because you're feeding, the flavour of the tomato is much more intense. I'm drooling now, I love tomatoes. So I hope that's helpful for you there. What have we got here? A couple of those. My gladioli have not died back. Do I leave them be? Mine haven't either. Still lots of green leaves. I leave the foliage up on bulbs as long as I can. Anything that flowers in spring, that foliage is effectively generating food to go back into the bulb. So if your gladioli leaves are still going, leave them there. And I'd feed them a little bit of liquid feed over the top, or actually into the holes themselves. Start putting the energy into that foliage that will produce a bigger bulb and better flower for you next year. I hope that's helpful for you, Ivy. What else have we got here? David, Judy Blackley, thank you, Judy, for your question. My sweet pea seeds have germinated. They're outside at the moment in their pots. Do I put them in a cold frame? What do we do? What do we do with sweet peas? They're normally pretty tough to keep going. I give a bit of extra protection because mine's a little bit exposed into the bottom corner of my garden. If you've got a cold frame, protecting them is great. The only thing with cold frames, of course, is to remember if they're stopping water getting onto those seeds, you're going to need to just lift them up and give them a water if we get any prolonged dry days. But at the minute, the weather's not looking too bad. But if you've got them already germinated, you're doing well. Don't we love sweet peas in this nation? The thing about sweet peas, you talk to everybody, they go, yeah, my gran grew them. And seeing those flowers, they almost look like, I suppose they look like butterflies' wings, don't they? They're beautiful, and the sweet fragrance you get from it. It's a cottage. It's true British plant, really. Sweet peas, we love them. And then when you cut a few of the branches and put them into a little vase or a cup or a beaker or something, and put it on the kitchen windowsill, it brings a smile to our face. We should all grow sweet peas. You can buy sweet pea kits. Johnson Seeds, funnily enough, sell them. They're lovely little kids kits. You can buy them online, and you get a little propagator with it and the soil and the seeds to sprinkle. Buy them for yourself, friends or family. They're great Christmas gifts, great for kids as well. What have I got here? Quite a few more questions coming in. Love this. Vicky Friendo, hello Vicky. Your question is, hi David, how do I take care of the pitcher plant? I know you should water these with rainwater. Yes, you do. Any form, a pitcher plant, Sarracenia, the long tubes, they're carnivorous plants. Yes, fresh rainwater works pretty well with the pitcher plants. I always sit them in a saucer with water as well, because they're bog plants. They like that too. And you effectively, you just need to be putting fresh water in and food that works. Of course, they'll eat the flies and insects that come into your home as well. There are pitcher plants for outside and inside. So any flies that you collect, just drop them down the tube, Vicky. And Maureen Stevens, hello Maureen. What trees do well in containers? Secret with trees, bigger the container you can get, the better you're off with that. You could grow, I don't know, Camarlot willows, Salix caprea penja, lovely weeping willow. It almost looks like an umbrella opened with the foliage that comes down from that. You get the lovely silvery catkins that then turn sulphur yellow as they grow. Need to water on a regular basis because it's a willow, on the willow family, it's a big container. They're quite nice small trees for containers. Japanese maples, many different varieties of Japanese maples. There are dwarf varieties as well. They work particularly good in containers. There are some dwarf pine trees that you can buy to plant into containers. There are small cherry trees. What would I say? Prunus Chiles weeping or Pendula rosea. Lovely weeping cherries that can grow in containers. But big containers, I'd say, you know the big whiskey barrels, wooden whiskey barrels that you get? Cut one of those in half. You can buy them online. They're relatively inexpensive. Great containers to have. And paint them, do whatever you want with them. And plant them into there. I hope that's helpful for trees in containers. How am I doing, guys, for questions? Chance for another one? They're all looking intent.
I was just going to say, you might want to mention about do not leave under the eaves if they're doing the containers.
Dell's saying, yeah, if you're growing anything in pots and containers and you push them close towards the border of your house, sometimes there are eaves, of course, on your roof that stop rain getting into. So there's always that dry patch framing your property where the eaves stop the rain coming into. Move them out a little bit to make sure that they get natural rainfall. Now I have quite a few questions on what you can do to protect your plants now it's getting colder. I've had 2 or 3 from one. I've got Instagram from Jembo82. You're asking me about how to protect plants. Somebody else asked me as well. I've got quite a few questions, but listen, I'll give you the answer to that. My last one before I have to go. Protecting plants is really important, of course, because if we get some very hard frost or extreme weather, some more tender plants or more sensitive plants have a tendency to suffer. So if you've grown anything in containers like fuchsias and geraniums this year, of course, if you're regularly growing those and you want to overwinter them, you can bring them in or out of the way. If you've got a greenhouse, obviously great. Not everybody's got a greenhouse. Some people have got unheated porch. That works pretty well too. A garage with a window, as long as you remember that you may need to water if there's long, dry days that are very sunny, that are warming your plants through the window and they're still growing and they've dried out. You need to keep them watered. You can buy horticultural fleece, which is like I suppose it's like a very thin webbing that you put over the top of plants to protect them and tuck them into bed. I normally, with a lot of my containers, move them from the patio into one area. So they're close together in more sheltered positions so they aren't as exposed. So the bottom line is anything you've planted new, specifically evergreens, because sometimes very young evergreens have a tendency, and keep a tendency to suffer from very cold weather. If it snows, I normally knock the snow off plants. It's not so much that the snow causes cold damage, but the weight of the snow can break branches as well. So I normally in the garden, for any of my very big shrubs, I give them a little prune up just so that they can balance and take weight of snow. Other than that, I'm out at 1 o'clock in the morning with a broom knocking it off. So protecting plants is really important. Check out the fleeces. There's some great blogs on my website. Likewise with soil conditioning, choice of compost, gardening for arthritis. There's loads of different PDF blogs and guides. Please visit the website. Please remember the national competition Illumination Street, which is encouraging people to brighten up their front gardens and put lights out to celebrate Christmas, and also to show cheer to a lot of the key workers, NHS and the emergency services and carers and everybody out there at the moment. So we're lighting up the streets to try and cheer them up as well. For more information on how you can decorate the front of your garden, put up lights and a whole host of others, visit the website illuminationstreet.com. It's all free, loads of information, and kindly sponsored by British Garden Centre Group. Thank you very much to all the team there. Well, loads of thank yous and messages. That's very kind of you to say. I really enjoy talking to you on a Thursday afternoon. Join me next week. We've got another great show. Send in your questions, email us, leave messages on the basis of the social media for us to get, and we will answer your questions then. All right, enjoy the sunshine wherever you are. Thanks to everybody who said hi, and hi back to you. See you again next week.